Chris Urquhart is a Canadian nonfiction writer based in Toronto whose work centers on immersive reporting about marginalized and transient youth cultures in the United States. After graduating from McGill University in her early 20s, she spent roughly 3 years embedded with young nomads, including travelers, runaways, rainbows, crust punks, and other road-based subcultures, documenting their daily lives, social dynamics, and survival strategies. This long-term fieldwork, conducted in partnership with photographer Katra Kahana, produced a narrative blend of memoir and ethnographic observation that examines themes of freedom, precarity, communal structures, mobility, and identity formation among youth living outside conventional social systems. Her research culminated in the publication of Dirty Kids, Chasing Freedom with America's Nomads in 2017, a work recognized for its first-hand detail and close engagement with the psychological and material realities of these communities. Dirty Kids, Chasing Freedom with America's Nomads chronicles Chris Urquhart's multi-year immersion in the world of young American travelers, runaways, crust punks, deadheads, rainbows, and other transient youth seeking freedom outside mainstream society. Through first-hand observation and participation, Urquhart documents the culture, social structures, and survival strategies of these nomads, portraying both the appeal of radical communal living and the harsher realities of poverty, addiction, illness, violence, and precarity. The narrative follows her journeys through rainbow gatherings, urban squats, hitchhiking routes, train-hopping networks, and traveler hubs across the United States, while examining the author's own psychological unraveling and struggle to reconcile the idealism of life on the road with its risks. The book ultimately reflects on freedom, belonging, and the limits of sustaining an alternative life outside Babylon, the traveler's term for mainstream society. Rainbow gathering and rainbow family material occupies a significant but not dominant share of the book, which totals roughly 208 pages. Rainbow-related content appears extensively in the introduction, throughout the full New Mexico 2009 section, much of the Pennsylvania 2010 section, parts of the Washington 2011 section, and in scattered references elsewhere, amounting to an estimated 90 to 110 pages. This places the rainbow-focused material at approximately 40 to 50% of the book. Although Rainbowland is a central ethnographic setting, the narrative also devotes substantial space to other environments: Detroit, New Orleans, New York, the House of Ill Repute, train-hopping culture, and individual traveler stories, so rainbow content forms a major but not majority portion of the overall work. In the book, Rainbowland is introduced as the setting of the Rainbow Gathering, an annual, freely accessible festival that takes place in rotating U.S. national forests. The space is deliberately detached from commercial structures, no money changes hands, and all food, shelter, and services operate on gifting or volunteer labor. The environment is chaotic yet functional, built from handmade kitchens, improvised trails, and camps that evolve daily as people arrive and disperse. The festival is portrayed not as an event with formal organizers but as an emergent, self-governing settlement that embodies the participants' desire to live outside conventional societal expectations. Attendees commonly refer to the outside world as Babylon, a term used to mark mainstream society as constrained, materialistic, and spiritually disconnected. In contrast, Rainbowland is imagined as a temporary utopia, a place where social hierarchies soften, generosity replaces commerce, and communal living structures dominate daily life. The author describes how entering Rainbowland produces a notable psychological shift, one marked by openness, emotional intensity, and a sense of liberation from the pressures and judgments of ordinary life. This idealism coexists with the disorder and improvisation of the environment, producing a social world that is both liberating and unpredictable. The Rainbow family is depicted as a loose, internally diverse collective rather than a formal group. It includes runaways, long-term nomads, deadheads, crust punks, hippies, and young people searching for belonging or refuge. Some arrive out of choice, others out of necessity, and many treat the gathering as one of the only stable reunions in their otherwise itinerant lives. Despite varied backgrounds and motivations, participants share a commitment to mutual aid, non-capitalist exchange, and the idea of family as chosen rather than inherited. This broad, fluid network forms the foundation of Rainbowland's social world and shapes the author's early impressions of the gathering. Core Principles and Culture of the Rainbow Family presents the Rainbow Family as operating through a radical gift economy in which all food, services, and shelter are provided without monetary exchange. Large communal kitchens produce meals from donated, foraged, or liberated supplies, and travelers rely on a shared ethic of contribution rather than formal roles or organizational hierarchies. This economy is not idealized. The author notes its messy, improvised nature, yet emphasizes that it functions because participants accept the underlying expectation that everyone gives what they can, whether labor, skills, or presence. Within this system, camps and kitchens form the social infrastructure of Rainbowland. These sites are entirely volunteer-run and shift from year to year, with long-standing kitchens such as Turtle Soup, Fat Kids, and Lovin' Ovens sometimes reappearing and sometimes dissolving into new camps. The constant flux, camps being absorbed, relocated, or reinvented, reflects the broader culture's fluidity. Participants embrace change as a natural component of the gathering, and this adaptability allows thousands of people to create a temporary settlement without centralized authority. Core values articulated throughout the book include communal living, sharing, and an explicit rejection of capitalism. The gatherings embrace a leave-no-trace ethic where attendees are responsible for minimizing ecological impact and participating in cleanup. Decision-making is based on consensus, a process the author observes functioning organically rather than bureaucratically. These principles provide a framework that both idealizes and challenges the participants, who must negotiate the balance between personal freedom and communal obligation in a loosely organized environment. Spiritual inclusivity is another defining feature. The book describes a range of spiritual expressions that coexist without formal doctrine, including New Age healing, Jewish practices, Hare Krishna chanting, and improvised rituals shaped by the participants. This eclectic spirituality contributes to the gathering's utopian identity, offering participants room for personal meaning-making. The spiritual atmosphere is portrayed as sincere rather than performative, shaped by individuals who weave their beliefs into shared spaces such as meditation circles, prayer tents, and music gatherings. Finally, the culture of the Rainbow Family is reinforced through distinctive linguistic and social rituals. Greetings such as "loving you" and the phrase "welcome home" serve as markers of belonging and acceptance, signaling the gathering's ethos of unconditional inclusion. These expressions help travelers, many of whom arrive from unstable or traumatic circumstances, feel recognized and valued. The repetition of these greetings throughout the book underscores the Rainbow Family's commitment to creating a sense of home in a place that exists only temporarily. In structure and organization of gatherings, rainbow gatherings are depicted as sprawling, improvised settlements composed of distinct zones that together form a temporary, self-organized community. Main Meadow or Main Circle serves as the symbolic heart of the gathering, where crowds assemble for meals, announcements, rituals, and communal events. Off the main paths lie numerous kitchen camps, specialized living areas, and social hubs, all connected by hand-forged trails winding through the forest. These trails form the circulatory system of Rainbowland, guiding participants through a landscape that expands and shifts as new camps appear and travelers move between sites. Communal kitchens form the practical foundation of the gathering's infrastructure. Kitchens such as Turtle Soup, Fat Kids, Shut Up and Eat It, and Shark Bait are staffed entirely by volunteers who forage, trade, or repurpose ingredients to produce large-scale meals. The book describes these spaces as lively, collaborative environments where food preparation doubles as a way to establish belonging. Because no money is exchanged, the kitchens become essential points of daily survival, drawing people in for nourishment, socialization, and work assignments that support the broader community. Trade Circle operates as the gathering's informal marketplace, though commerce occurs strictly through barter rather than currency. Here, participants lay out blankets and small displays offering items such as muskrat furs, kombucha cultures, handmade crafts, pocket knives, and nostalgic trinkets. The author's account highlights the organic creativity of this space, which functions both as a social meeting ground and as a practical method for travelers to acquire needed supplies. Trade Circle reinforces the ethic of mutual exchange and underscores the anti-capitalist identity of the gathering. Interactions with law enforcement are managed through a simple but effective community signal system. When police officers or park rangers approach, participants shout 7 Up, a warning that travels rapidly through the forest as others repeat it. This call reflects both the uneasy relationship between Rainbowland and official authority and the group's vigilance in maintaining autonomy. The warning system is portrayed as an ingrained cultural reflex, underscoring the participants' collective desire to protect their temporary settlement from outside scrutiny. The book also emphasizes that the gathering structure is inherently fluid. Camps dissolve, merge, or shift locations as people arrive or depart, and commonly known kitchens may reappear one year and vanish the next. This lack of fixed infrastructure is not treated as a flaw but as an essential feature of rainbow governance. The ease with which camps adapt and reconfigure themselves reflects a broader philosophy of flexibility, self-direction, and communal responsiveness that defines the Rainbow family's approach to organizing thousands of people without centralized leadership. Daily life in Rainbowland is characterized by a continuous flow of communal activities that structure the social world of the gathering. Communal cooking is central, with large groups preparing meals over open fires or in improvised kitchen setups built from scavenged materials. Music circles and drum circles arise spontaneously, creating a soundtrack of live, human-made sound that the book contrasts with the electronic music of other festivals. Prayer gatherings and spiritual rituals, ranging from Jewish chanting to New Age practices, occur throughout the site, reflecting the community's eclectic and inclusive approach to spirituality. Wellness services also appear in ad hoc form, including herbal remedies, informal counseling, and care for illness or injury provided by volunteers. Children are a visible and significant part of the environment, moving freely through camps and trails without strict supervision. Many of the long-term travelers the author interviews describe the gathering as their only consistent home, returning annually to reconnect with the friends they refer to as their kids or family. This sense of reunion shapes the atmosphere of the event, making it both a survival space for those living on the margins and a nostalgic homecoming for nomads who spend the rest of the year dispersed across the country. The presence of children also underscores the degree to which Rainbowland operates as a complete social ecosystem rather than a simple festival. Newcomers integrate into the community through work. Volunteering for kitchen duty, chopping vegetables, stirring pots, collecting water, or preparing raw foods allows them to contribute immediately to the functioning of the gathering. Others assist with trail maintenance, building communal structures, or supporting camp operations. The book shows that these acts of labor are not just practical necessities but also cultural rites of passage. By contributing, newcomers gain acceptance and begin to understand the gathering's rhythms and values. Participation, rather than observation, is presented as the only meaningful way to belong in Rainbowland. The journey to the gathering is often as difficult as life within it. Many participants arrive by hitchhiking, train hopping, or long-distance walking, often filthy, hungry, and carrying minimal belongings. The author describes cramped rides, dangerous roads, and exhausted travelers staggering into camp loaded with gear. These arduous journeys shape the emotional tone of arrival. Entering Rainbowland often feels like crossing into a sanctuary after a period of risk and deprivation. The contrast between the harshness of travel and the communal embrace of Rainbowland reinforces the gathering's role as both a refuge and a temporary home for the nomadic youth who depend on it. In the book, a camp is described as a fixed and recognizable feature of every rainbow gathering, positioned at the forest entrance where newcomers first pass through. It is portrayed as the roughest zone in Rainbowland, marked by heavy drinking, constant intoxication, and an atmosphere that contrasts sharply with the more spiritually oriented or cooperative areas deeper inside the site. The author notes that a camp's location, right at the gateway, creates a kind of threshold between Babylon and Rainbowland, but it also makes it the place where the gathering's most chaotic behavior is concentrated and most visible. The narrative repeatedly identifies a camp as the site historically associated with the majority of assaults, stabbings, and confrontations within rainbow culture. The author approaches the area with caution, aware that its reputation is rooted in real episodes of violence and unpredictability. The book emphasizes the tension in this space, while the rest of the gathering operates on volunteerism, peace rhetoric, and spiritual eclecticism. A camp embodies the harder edge of nomadic life, drawing people who are drinking heavily, dealing with their own trauma, or testing the limits of communal order. This duality illustrates the internal complexities of the rainbow family, where ideals of peace coexist with pockets of chronic volatility. Despite its dangers, the author also notes moments of unexpected warmth from a camp residents. Individuals who might appear threatening at first glance sometimes show generosity, curiosity, or friendliness toward newcomers. These interactions complicate the simple depiction of a camp as solely dangerous, revealing that even in its instability, the camp contains people capable of kindness and connection. This complexity reinforces one of the book's broader themes. Within Rainbowland, every space, even the most chaotic, holds both risk and humanity. The book portrays Calm, the Center for Alternative Living Medicine, as one of the most important functional spaces within Rainbowland. Staffed entirely by volunteers, Calm offers free medical attention ranging from herbal remedies and basic first aid to condoms and informal counseling. Its services operate without formal equipment or institutional oversight, relying instead on the skills and improvisation of those who step forward to help. This makes Calm emblematic of the gathering's gift-based ethos. Care is freely given, collectively organized, and rooted in the belief that the community must look after its own. Many participants turn to Calm because they arrive at the gathering with untreated illnesses, infections, and injuries that have accumulated over months or years on the road. The author repeatedly observes respiratory problems, persistent coughs, flea infestations, infected wounds, hepatitis concerns, and general physical deterioration among the travelers. For people who cannot afford regular medical treatment or who distrust conventional institutions, Calm becomes a necessary health resource rather than an optional service. Even with its limitations, the center provides attention that many attendees would not otherwise receive. The gathering as a whole functions as an informal sanctuary for travelers struggling with both physical and mental health challenges. Individuals with broken bones, unmanaged psychiatric conditions, or exhaustion from street life arrive seeking rest, support, and temporary stability. Calm, and the surrounding community, offer a haven where people can recuperate without cost or scrutiny. The author frames this refuge as one of the essential social roles the gathering plays. It becomes a place where America's most marginalized nomads find a degree of care and safety that mainstream systems often fail to provide. In the book, police officers and park rangers maintain a regular presence around rainbow gatherings, and their patrols generate an ongoing sense of tension. The author describes these authorities riding on horseback or moving in convoys at the forest's edge, creating an atmosphere of surveillance that contrasts sharply with the gathering's ethos of freedom and self-governance. Although the officers technically oversee safety and environmental compliance, their presence is frequently interpreted by participants as intrusive or adversarial, reinforcing the divide between Rainbowland and the world they call Babylon. Participants respond to law enforcement in markedly different ways. Some treat officers almost as another type of camp figure, an expected part of the landscape, while others immediately warn newcomers never to engage with them. The call of 7 Up rings through the forest whenever police or rangers are spotted, rapidly relayed by attendees as a communal alert. This reflexive signaling underscores the shared understanding that law enforcement can disrupt the gathering's fragile autonomy and that caution is woven into daily interactions. Misunderstandings and conflicts with authorities are portrayed as common. The author recounts episodes in which travelers are harassed or arrested for minor infractions, including skinny dipping, eating food by a river, or merely existing in public spaces while appearing homeless. These incidents sometimes escalate into verbal abuse, with officers recorded using slurs or derogatory language toward rainbow participants. Such events reinforce the perception among travelers that they are criminalized for their lifestyle rather than for any meaningful wrongdoing. Relations with nearby towns are similarly fraught. Local residents and businesses often view the gathering with suspicion or alarm, citing concerns about theft, dumpster diving, or general disorder. Travelers visiting town for supplies may be watched closely, refused service, or treated as if they are inherently untrustworthy. The book makes clear that these tensions arise from both cultural misunderstandings and real economic pressures. Rainbow participants frequently survive through scavenging or spanging, practices that can unsettle communities unaccustomed to large influxes of nomadic youth. Together, these strained interactions highlight the precarious position the Rainbow family occupies between idealistic communalism and the restrictive norms of the outside world. The book depicts Rainbowland as a community that promotes egalitarian ideals yet contains clear informal hierarchies. Rainbow hippies tend to be cleaner, more spiritually focused participants who arrive specifically for the gathering and often align themselves with the event's utopian rhetoric. In contrast, the dirty kids are long-term travelers, often homeless, worn down from the road, and carrying the visible marks of itinerant life, who treat the gathering as a familiar refuge rather than a spiritual pilgrimage. A third group, the trustafarians, consists of wealthier young people traveling on family money. They may blend in aesthetically but occupy a different economic reality, which can create quiet resentment among those struggling to meet basic needs. These distinctions shape social interactions and experiences of safety within the gathering. Although Rainbowland publicly emphasizes peace, love, and communal respect, the book includes accounts from young women who describe sexual harassment, catcalls, and unwanted attention. The tension between the gathering's idealistic rhetoric and the realities of gendered vulnerability is a recurring theme, revealing that Rainbowland's informal structures do not reliably protect participants from the risks present in any loosely governed space. The author portrays these incidents as part of the hidden underside of the community, acknowledged by some but rarely addressed directly. For many of the long-term travelers, however, the gathering still functions as an important sanctuary. Road veterans speak of Rainbowland as a predictable annual meeting place where dispersed kids, a term they use for their extended traveling family, can reconnect after months spent hopping trains, hitchhiking, or surviving in unstable urban environments. This sense of reunion reinforces the emotional significance of the gathering. Despite its flaws, it remains one of the few spaces where a diverse, marginalized nomadic population can briefly feel grounded, cared for, and at home. The book presents Rainbowland as a space built on utopian ideals, yet filled with substantial dangers that challenge those aspirations. Violence, particularly around volatile areas like a camp, is a recurring threat, and the author documents episodes of stabbings, confrontations, and explosive conflict. Addiction and intoxication are also widespread, with alcohol and drug use shaping many interactions and heightening unpredictability. Sexual assault and harassment, despite the gathering's rhetoric of universal love, appear as persistent risks, especially for young women navigating loosely supervised camps. Sanitation is equally precarious. The handmade infrastructure cannot fully accommodate the thousands who descend on the forest, leaving many vulnerable to exposure, contamination, and unsafe living conditions. The ecological impact of rainbow gatherings is another source of criticism. Although the community promotes a leave-no-trace ethic, the book notes instances where the scale of attendance strains fragile forest ecosystems. Trails erode under heavy use, water sources become polluted, and temporary settlements disrupt wildlife. Some gatherings have reportedly faced community backlash or scrutiny from authorities due to the environmental footprint left behind. The tension between Rainbowland's stated environmental values and its real impact underscores the limits of idealistic, large-scale communal living in sensitive natural spaces. Health challenges form a constant backdrop to the author's observations. Many attendees arrive already unwell, and the conditions in camp, including continual dirt exposure, limited washing facilities, flea infestations, untreated infections, and open wounds, exacerbate existing problems. Calm offers makeshift care, but the volume and severity of health issues often exceed what volunteers can reasonably manage. The prevalence of visible illness highlights the degree of physical strain carried by nomadic youth and the inadequacy of their access to conventional healthcare systems outside the gathering. Taken together, these risks reveal a broader contradiction at the heart of Rainbowland. While the gathering symbolizes freedom, communal care, and escape from Babylon, it simultaneously exposes participants to the harsh realities of nomadic poverty, instability, sickness, insecurity, and trauma. The narrative shows how the ideals of peace and openness exist alongside, and often collide with, the vulnerabilities inherent in a community lacking formal infrastructure or protections. The result is a complex portrait of a utopia that is deeply appealing yet fundamentally fragile. In the book, the author highlights several parallels between rainbow gatherings and Burning Man, noting that both events rely on principles of gifting, communal effort, and the creation of temporary communities that operate outside mainstream economic norms. Each functions as a temporary autonomous zone where participants step outside conventional consumer culture to experiment with alternative forms of social organization. These shared principles create environments that feel liberating, imaginative, and self-directed, attracting people searching for community, creativity, or escape. Despite these similarities, the two events diverge sharply in structure and culture. Rainbow is entirely free, decentralized, and non-institutional, with no formal leadership or ticketing system. Burning Man, by contrast, requires expensive tickets, significant logistical preparation, and a large infrastructure supported by paid staff. Rainbow also emphasizes a rejection of technology, relying exclusively on human-made music and low-tech communal tools, while Burning Man celebrates technological innovation through large-scale art installations, electronically amplified music, and engineered spectacles. These structural differences shape the tone of each gathering and the types of people who attend. The book makes clear that Rainbow tends to attract people with limited financial means, train hoppers, hitchhikers, and homeless youth, who arrive on foot or through improvised travel networks. Burning Man, conversely, draws participants who can afford the high cost of entry, transportation, and often elaborate camps or meal plans. Yet despite the socio-economic gulf between the two, both events forge temporary societies that challenge mainstream norms, offering participants a sense of communal living and self-determined identity that stands in contrast to Babylon, the term rainbow participants use to describe ordinary consumer life. In the book, rainbow gatherings function as a crucial stabilizing point for nomadic youth who spend most of the year scattered across cities, rail yards, highways, and squats. Many of the travelers the author meets describe the gathering as the only predictable moment in their annual cycle, a place where they know they will find familiar faces, shared history, and a temporary sense of continuity. This annual return gives structure to lives otherwise defined by constant movement and insecurity, making Rainbowland an emotional and social anchor within an unpredictable existence. Beyond reunion, the gatherings offer forms of support that are rarely available to young people living on the road. Food is freely provided, companionship emerges easily, and the collective environment often feels safer than the streets, where travelers risk harassment, violence, or arrest. The gatherings' volunteer-run kitchens, communal fires, and improvised networks of care provide practical survival resources, meals, rest, healing spaces, and warmth, while also meeting deeper emotional needs. For many youth who have experienced fractured families or unstable homes, Rainbowland creates a brief but meaningful sense of belonging. Because many participants lack any fixed residence, the gathering becomes their most consistent approximation of home. Even though it exists for only a short period each year, it offers a stable geography and community they can return to again and again. Travelers speak of the Rainbow family as their primary social unit, and the gathering as the place where they feel most recognized and understood. This temporary home is not defined by permanence but by the relationships, rituals, and shared ethos that reappear each year. Throughout the book, the author frames Rainbowland as a space that simultaneously escapes and critiques Babylon, the term participants use for mainstream society. The gathering acts both as a retreat from the pressures, surveillance, and economic demands of ordinary life and as a laboratory for alternative ways of living, rooted in gifting, communal labor, mutual care, and non-capitalist values. For nomadic youth, Rainbowland embodies the possibility of a different social order, even if only for a moment, and reveals the powerful role that temporary, intentional communities can play in the lives of those who fall outside traditional structures. In her long-term reflection, the author concludes that rainbow gatherings demonstrate the real, if fragile, viability of anarchistic self-governance. Over several years of immersion, she observes that thousands of people can, in fact, organize food distribution, medical care, sanitation, and conflict navigation without formal leadership or economic exchange. While the system is messy and often strained, it functions well enough to support a temporary community. This realization challenges her assumptions about social organization and shows her that collective improvisation and voluntary cooperation can replace many structures typically thought indispensable. Rainbowland also becomes, for the author, a powerful symbol of freedom and a lived alternative to capitalist life. Its gift economy, communal ethos, and rejection of commercial culture offer a vision of existence outside the constraints of Babylon, free from rent, jobs, schedules, and institutional oversight. In Rainbowland, she experiences a sense of openness and possibility that reshapes her understanding of what community and autonomy might look like. The gathering becomes a space where sovereignty is distributed rather than centralized, and where emotional belonging arises through shared labor and shared vulnerability rather than formal relationships. Yet the author ultimately acknowledges that Rainbowland cannot offer the long-term safety or stability she needs. The violence, illness, volatility, and precariousness of nomadic life wear her down, leaving her physically and mentally unwell. Returning home after her final gathering, she recognizes both the profound transformation the experience has given her and the limits of sustaining such a life. Rainbowland expands her sense of what freedom and community can mean, but she concludes that its anarchic beauty is inseparable from risks she cannot continue to endure. From the perspective of the dirty kids in the book, arriving at a rainbow gathering feels like crossing a threshold after weeks or months of travel marked by exhaustion, hunger, and exposure. Many reach the forest on foot, hitching rides from strangers or climbing out of freight cars still coated in the dust and grime of rail yards. They step onto forest trails with heavy packs digging into their shoulders, clothes stiff from sweat, mud, and city soot. The transition is immediate. The noise of highways and industrial spaces falls away, replaced by the sound of drums echoing through the trees and the smell of wood smoke drifting from unseen camps. The first encounters often happen at the edge of a camp, where intoxicated veterans greet newcomers with slurred enthusiasm or suspicious glares. This initial contact can feel both welcoming and dangerous, a reminder that Rainbowland holds its own internal risks. As they move deeper into the gathering, these travelers experience a rare sensation. The pressure to justify their presence dissolves. No one demands payment, proof of identity, or explanation of hardship. Instead, voices call out "Welcome home," a phrase that, for many who have been sleeping under bridges or beside dumpsters, feels startlingly personal. Kitchens invite them toward steaming pots of rice and vegetables, prepared by volunteers working barefoot in the dirt. Meals are served without question, often accompanied by conversations that begin abruptly and intimately, as if the shared condition of being on the road creates instant familiarity. For dirty kids who spend much of their lives confronting suspicion or avoidance, this unconditional access to food and attention can feel disarming. The sensory world of Rainbowland stands in sharp contrast to the controlled environments of cities. Music arises continuously, travelers beating hand drums in erratic rhythms, harmonicas carried on lanyards, and voices singing improvised chants pass between camps. Nights are lit by scattered campfires, where groups sit cross-legged on tarps or logs, smoking, telling stories, or passing around dented pots of communal meals. In these moments, the dirty kids experience a type of belonging not tied to property, money, or employment. The constant movement, children running freely, dogs weaving through camps, volunteers hauling water, creates a feeling of dense, unstructured activity that mirrors the fluidity of their own nomadic lives. At the same time, their perspective is shaped by the realities they carry with them: infections that have gone untreated, wounds reopened by long walks, and anxiety sharpened by past trauma. Calm becomes an early stop for many, offering herbs, bandages, and advice without cost. The informal medical space, staffed by volunteers working under tarps or in makeshift shelters, can feel like an improvised clinic for the entire subculture of travelers who lack insurance or trustworthy access to care. The Dirty Kids recognize Calm's limitations but also its importance. It is one of the few places where their bodies are examined with patience instead of judgment. Social interactions within the gathering reinforce a sense of familiarity. The Dirty Kids know one another from rail yards, squats, or prior seasons. Rainbow serves as a reunion site where fragmented networks reassemble. They share stories of arrests, of lost gear, of dogs taken by authorities, and of friends who didn't survive winter. Around fires, they recognize faces last seen in other states, each encounter stitching together the scattered map of their travels. Even newcomers who have never attended before quickly learn that Rainbowland is one of the only places where travelers, runaways, and ruthless youth outnumber the settled. Yet these moments of connection coexist with unease. Threats of violence linger, particularly in contested areas like a camp, where alcohol intensifies volatility. Travelers sleep lightly, aware of the possibility of theft or conflict. Women, even within Rainbowland's friendly veneer, must navigate unwelcome attention. The Dirty Kids understand that Rainbow is not free from the dangers of their wider world, it simply reshapes them within a different context. Still, the risk feels more manageable than life on sidewalks or in rail yards, where police scrutiny and street violence are constant. Despite these contradictions, the gathering offers the Dirty Kids a temporary environment in which the demands of Babylon, employment, payment, paperwork, surveillance, fall away. The forest becomes a place where they can rest without being moved along, eat without performing gratitude, and exist without justifying their poverty. The experience is not idyllic, but it is spacious. It allows them to imagine, however briefly, a community organized around the principles of mutual support rather than scarcity. When they eventually leave Rainbowland, they carry with them a memory of having been part of a functional, if fragile, collective, a reminder that another mode of living is possible, even if it cannot be sustained on the road.